We begin the day with their shared security. The European Union and Ukraine have signed a joint security agreement. It's meant to assure support for Ukraine in the future as it continues its battle against Russia. The deal includes existing EU initiatives such as training of Ukrainian soldiers, but there are also long-term commitments such as supplying Ukraine with artillery and air defense systems.
A further firm show of support from the European Union to Ukraine. The signing of a security pact between the Ukrainian president and EU leaders. It is the EU's spelled-out promise to support Ukraine for as long as it takes and as intensely as needed.
These security commitments covers the military, the financial, the diplomatic, and in particular it will be the way of channeling the resources coming from Russia frozen assets.
Ukraine promised reforms, for example, in the area of security, intelligence and defense. Volodymyr Zelensky joined the national heads of EU states and governments at their summit to argue that everything is put to work immediately against Russia's full-scale invasion of his country.
We will discuss today with the leaders about it, our next steps, and of course the urgent things. Air defense, that is one. And of course all the packages, thanks to all the partners. What we had signed it or accepted, but we need them urgently on the battlefield.
Earlier this week, the 27-country bloc announced 2.4 billion euros in military aid for Ukraine to be delivered by the end of the year, coming from the profits of Russian assets seized in Europe. Talks on Ukraine joining the EU also officially got underway this week, though the accession negotiations could take years or even decades to conclude.
Well, the joint security deal with the European Union could become Ukraine's most important insurance policy in a worst-case scenario. Worst case would be losing massive military and economic support from the United States following a Trump win in November's presidential election.
War rages in Ukraine. 27 months after Russia's invasion, Ukraine's been running short of soldiers, ammunition, and money. President Volodymyr Zelensky's been trying to fix that and generate commitments for support after the war is over, traveling relentlessly to sign security agreements. He's met with Western leaders across Europe in recent weeks. Zelensky has signed 17 bilateral deals so far. Germany agreed to a 10-year security agreement pledging equipment, including air defense missiles, as well as help rebuilding once the conflict is over. France signed a similar 10-year deal, helping with training, sending jet fighters, military vehicles, and missiles, but also promising to help Ukraine against future attacks and to reform its institutions. In Belgium, Zelensky secured pledges for dozens of F-16 fighters. This all came as Ukraine's biggest backer, the U.S., also signed a 10-year deal guaranteeing military assistance. The deals with individual countries are meant not just to beef up Ukraine's military, but also to strengthen cooperation, preparing the way for membership, one day, in NATO and the EU. The bloc and its member countries have already provided support worth nearly $110 billion since the war started. For Ukraine, the stakes couldn't be higher. No longer how long the war lasts, it will eventually need to rebuild its shattered infrastructure and make sure it can deter attacks in the future.
Well, I'm joined now by Rudik from Kyiv. She's a member of the Ukrainian parliament, and she is leader of the political party Holos. Kyra, it's good to have you back on the program. Your president, President Zelensky, and the European Union, they've now signed a joint security accord. This looks good on paper, but what about on the battlefield? What's more important right now, weapons or these grand gestures that are coming from Brussels?
Hello, Brent. Thank you so much for having me. Well, the answer is both are important and they are related because these are not only gestures, those security agreements, they have actually the essence, and this essence is to get our Ukrainian soldiers more weapons and supplies. And this is the number one in all the security agreements that President Zelensky signed. Same as in the security agreement between Ukraine and EU, to get us weapons and, to quote President, to get all the political promises executed. This is what we really, really need. The rest of the things are very important, but though they are secondary, because the main thing that we as politicians need to get to our people is the weapons to fight with, to have as many chances as we can in winning the war.
Let me ask you about the war. Zelensky, he was at the front line only yesterday. He says that the Russian offensive in Kharkiv shows that international pressure on Moscow is not strong enough. So what should European countries, what should the EU be doing that it's not doing?
Well, first of all, to get us all the weapons, as I said. The second point is to provide us with very much necessary Patriot missile systems and other air defense systems so we can protect our cities and we can help our soldiers fighting at the front. And the third point is sanctions. If Russia is able to produce weapons and supplies, it means they are able to buy technologies and particles that they are not supposed to be able to do. And this means the sanctions are not working as well as they were supposed to. There are some loopholes and they need to be closed. There needs to be a way of getting Russian assets that are being frozen in the European Union in total. We have moved very far in the matter, using their percentages, the profits of these assets, but we need to strip Russia of their money and make sure that we are using them for good to stop Russia. And these are all the points that are listed in the security agreement. And this is actually, in plain words, what President Zelensky was explaining to our partners, that we are so grateful for everything that is being done. But to get the result, Russia's defeat, we need to have more things done right now.
Let me ask you about your country and possible membership in the European Union. Ukraine's top EU negotiator says that the process of Ukraine's accession to the EU is irreversible and that it represents the will of the Ukrainian people. I can imagine that you would agree with that statement, but I mean, how do you quantify that?
As of right now, we know that more than 80% of Ukrainians support Ukraine's accession to EU, and around this number also supports our accession to NATO. And this will is very important because it reminds us that the war did not start in 2022. It started in 2014 when people expressed their will to join European Union and not to remain connected to Russia. And right now we are in the process of actually executing on their will, moving our country as close as possible to be EU members. And I think within this last 2 years, we have made a progress that no one ever would have believed in. And we have done it.
Let me be a devil's advocate for a moment here. Could these EU membership talks, could they backfire? Could they make it easier for Vladimir Putin to end the war and not give back territory in eastern Ukraine?
I do not see how that would be happening. The recent polls again in Ukraine are showing that people are willing to fight and are against giving up on any territories. And the EU talks, they demand the reforms from us that we are willing to do, but they never demand us giving up the territories. The President was very clear, and I think there's a unity right now within the Ukrainian politicians and also people on the matter.
Okay, worst case scenario before we run out of time. Donald Trump becomes U.S. president in November. U.S. military aid for Ukraine dries up. Pressure from Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump grows for you to accept the partitioning of your country. What role will this security commitment, this joint security commitment with the European Union, what role will it play then?
We hope that it will be executed much earlier, and we will, by that time, receive much more weapons that we are getting right now, and most important, air defense systems.
Yeah.
Potential change in the United States as an opportunity for us. So I wouldn't be that pessimistic on the matter.
All right. Well, yeah, you have to be an optimist if you're going to be in politics, that is for sure. Kira Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Kira, as always, we appreciate your time. Appreciate you speaking with us this evening. Thank you. Well, have they worn out their welcome? Should unemployed Ukrainian refugees here in Germany be allowed to stay? Well, some German Conservative Party lawmakers say no, they should go home. But Ukrainians say they want to stay and they want to work. But they claim German bureaucracy is getting in their way.
Hello, technic.
Oleksiy's been working as a technician in a Berlin hotel since 2022, shortly after he fled Ukraine. It's a job he's overqualified for, but glad to have.
For me, work means that I can be a real citizen in this city. I do my bit for the economy.
Oleksiy is in the minority. Around 22% of the working-age Ukrainian refugees in Germany have a job. Now, Alexander Dobrindt, a senior figure in the conservative opposition, is calling for unemployed Ukrainian refugees to be sent back. He's been widely condemned.
This is really sheer populism on the backs of mothers who fled the Russian attack with their small children.
It's Alla Belikova's job to help those very people get jobs in Germany. She finds Dobrindt's statement problematic.
You shouldn't put them all under blanket suspicion. In my opinion, all Ukrainians have become an object. And these are different cases and different people. Some are quicker on the labour market, others are slower on the labour market. Some learn German quickly, others more slowly.
Belikova helped Oleksiy find his job. She says there are other hurdles, from childcare to long waits for Ukrainians to have their qualifications recognized by German authorities.
If we didn't wait so long or didn't take so long to process, or if we found quicker models to enable nursery school teachers to work quickly in kindergartens, then we would have seen much faster labour market entries.
Oleksiy knows this too well. He trained as an accountant in Ukraine, but has been waiting for months for his diploma to be recognized.
I
want to develop myself. And if my experience as a technician isn't enough, then I'll try working as an accountant.
It's people like him that the economy is crying out for, and the mood among the Ukrainian community is that with a few tweaks to the system, that could lead to more Oleksiy's.
I spoke earlier about this with Fabian Funke. He's a member of the German parliament for the governing Social Democrats. He told us what he thinks of the proposal to send Ukrainian refugees back to their country if they don't find work here in Germany.
I think this statement is a shame for Germany and also a shame for a party that holds Christianity also in their name. And I think when you look at the Ukraine, you see that they're every night flying thousands of missiles to the towns, to also civil object. I think it's our obligation to help our neighbors on there and also to help people coming here. And of course, also help them to find a job. But in this situation where this is all happening, talking about sending them back, I think would be totally wrong and is something that plays Putin also in his hands.
It's true, however, that roughly a million of the roughly 1 million Ukrainians who came to Germany because of the Russian invasion, only about 20% of those have found work. How do you explain that?
I think, firstly, when you look at those numbers, you have to see who these people are. We have a lot of people fleeing from Ukraine that are old. You have a lot of people fleeing from Ukraine that are solo mothers with little children. And so I think it is really important that we make the prerequisitions also for those people getting able to work. And I think this is where we need to get better, to bring more also Ukrainian refugees into work, to have like childcare for them, to be able to also have their diplomas ready for use in Germany. And I think these are things that needs to be done. And also with the measures we've taken in the last months, we did a lot also to up this numbers of people working here from Ukraine. And I think this will also be successful in the future.
Now, your party leads Germany's government. I'm just wondering what sort of level of employment among the Ukrainian refugees would you like to see, and why has your party not managed to get more Ukrainian refugees into the labor market yet?
Firstly, I'm not really sure if like making a number out is really important, because these are all individual people and you have to look case by case how to help these people getting into work. I think it needs to be a lot more, even then when you look at the old people who stay longer in Germany. And I think this is obvious. And therefore, yeah, we need to do a lot. We need to do a lot more in integration, and also when it comes to providing language courses, when it comes to providing childcare, all those things needs to be done. And of course, it is a big challenge when 1 million people in such a short time from one country come to another. And therefore, it is really hard. Germany is the country with the most people from Ukraine fleeing here. And so, yeah, I think we did a lot in the last 12 and 24 months, but I think it needs to be a lot more done when it comes to making those people able to work and also having them access to the infrastructure that they need.
Now, immediately after the war began in Ukraine, the German government waived the requirement for Ukrainians to apply for asylum and automatically gave them the right to stay in the country and receive unemployment benefits. Can this continue, Mr. Funke, do you think, even if the war goes on for years to come?
When we look at the definition, what are refugees for us, then these are people fleeing from war and other stuff. And I think nobody would doubt that there's war in Ukraine. And also, I would deeply not share the view of Alexander Dobrindt saying there are like secure parts of Ukraine, in Western Ukraine. When you look how the war is fought and you see all those missiles, drones and things flying to civil infrastructure also in Western Ukraine. And therefore, I would think there's no doubt right now that there's war in Ukraine. And I think that we should care also about the people fleeing from war, fleeing from our neighboring country, Ukraine. And therefore, I would really say that everybody that says it is safe in Ukraine should really go there by himself and see it themselves how the situation there is, because it is the case that this help and these things are still necessary to take these people here.
Mr. Funke, thank you very much for taking time to talk with us today. That was German lawmaker Fabian Funke.